Hey, this is Chris from the All Creatures Podcast, and I'm just going to set up this interview because we did it more of a roundtable discussion with a group that I was just so fortunate to be able to meet and interview for our podcast this week, and that is the Koala team from the San Diego Zoo. This was a huge treat for me. As many of you know that listen to the podcast, San Diego is where I grew up. The San Diego Zoo is the one institution on earth that influenced me so much as a young child, and then as I grew up into my teenage years, and really gave me direction on what I want to do with my life, which in the end led to this podcast many years later. I won't tell you how many years later, but quite a few. So we reached out to the San Diego Zoo, and they were very kind to us to allow us to meet with their koala team and interview them about, not only what it takes to take care of these animals under human care, but also what's going on out in the wild. It is incredible what the San Diego Zoo and that organization is doing for wildlife throughout the world, and we discuss it in the interview. So I was able to drive down to San Diego, meet with the keepers. They'd just gotten off work, so we met right there in Balboa Park, right across the entrance to the San Diego Zoo. And we just had a great discussion. So I really, really hope you enjoy this interview. It was a pleasure. So thank you to the San Diego Zoo and their koala team for taking the time out of their day to talk to us and spread the knowledge, because that is what we need to do, is just keep spreading the knowledge on these animals and continue to fight for them in the wild. Enjoy. So welcome. I'm in San Diego at the beautiful Balboa Park, my hometown, and I've got a group of koala keepers from the San Diego Zoo here. I'm super excited, as usual, to be interviewing them. So thank you for agreeing to do this interview.
You're welcome.
You had no choice.
We're excited too.
Folks, they had no choice. Their bosses said, you will do this interview. No, we do appreciate you taking your time. I know you had an opportunity to say no, and you said you would. So we're sitting here in beautiful San Diego, and I just quickly want, if each of you can just introduce yourselves and your current roles at the San Diego Zoo.
My name is Lindsey King. I am a senior koala keeper at the San Diego Zoo.
I'm Candis Malcolm, and I'm a koala keeper at the San Diego Zoo.
And my name is Jennifer Roesler, and I am a senior mammal keeper and working with the koalas.
Yay. If anybody listens to the podcast, they know the San Diego Zoo is my zoo. That is my zoo. I grew up since I was 4 years old, coming down to the zoo. I've seen the zoo grow. So this one's a real treat for me to be outside its gates talking to you. So I guess what would be really cool is if you talk about just your journey, how you ended up at the San Diego Zoo, your background, where you went to school, or, how you got involved there.
Oh gosh. I feel like we're all animal lovers as kids, and I went to zoo camp at Busch Gardens when I was in high school, and I knew I've loved picking up hippo poop for some reason, so I realized that was a different course. So I went to school at the University of Vermont for animal science, and did a bunch of internships, different zoos. Worked at a zoo outside Philadelphia in Norristown, Pennsylvania for a year, and then I thought, if you're going to be a zookeeper, why not try to be a zookeeper at San Diego Zoo? So I applied, and they hired me, and I've been at the zoo for about 13 and a half years, which is crazy, and I've worked all over the zoo, but I went to Australia in 2011 on a work exchange and fell in love with marsupials and came back and basically demanded to be put on the koala team. Took a couple years for that to come through, but it's been worth it. It's been amazing.
Awesome.
So same type of deal with always being an animal lover growing up. Younger days, you really only hear about if you want to work with animals, you become a vet. So that's what I said I wanted to do, and then as I got older and realized what vets actually do, I said, no way. That is not what I want to do. So I actually didn't discover zookeeping until after high school, and I was watching a show on Animal Planet about caring for baby marsupials. And that just triggered something, and I said, what do I need to do to be able to do that? To just actually take care of the animals. And started researching, applied for college right away, went to a community college for a couple years, and then I was lucky enough to start the zoo program at the Santa Fe Teaching Zoo. So I got my degree in zoo animal technology there, fell in love with all kinds of things, but I always was passionate about marsupials. I don't know why, I just think they're really cool and unique, so they're just, you hear people, I want to be a great ape keeper, I want to be a big cat keeper, and I was the weird girl that was like, I want to work with marsupials. So I had an opportunity to work with tree kangaroos very closely at school, and then through volunteering, and then my first paid zookeeper job was in Tennessee, and I got to work with some wallabies there, a program wallaby, and it just kind of spurred on my love for marsupials, even though I worked with a lot of different animals, fell in love with a lot of different animals. And my koala journey started in Dallas. We actually had lone koalas from San Diego Zoo, so I was lucky enough to be able to work with them for a couple years, and then I heard of a position opening at San Diego Zoo with the koalas. And I wasn't actually planning on leaving Texas anytime soon, but I was told, obviously, if you want to work with koalas, San Diego is the place to do it outside of Australia. So I applied, and they hired me too, and it was crazy. So, and I've been here just shy of 2 years, so I'm the newest koala team member.
Well, my journey was a little different. I found my love for koalas when I was 12 and received my first stuffed koala for Christmas. And from there, my passion just grew. I was very fortunate in high school that junior, senior year, they offered opportunities for animal care classes, and half of those days were actually spent at the zoo. So it was kind of a nice opportunity to get to know the keepers. Initially, I didn't think I wanted to be a zookeeper, but it's amazing when you work with the keepers themselves and you get to know them a lot more and what they do and what they take care of. You kind of start loving that particular job. And so what ended up happening is I got a position in the children's zoo, continued going to school at the University of Toledo, and in the meantime, one of the gorilla keepers was injured, and I kind of floated into that position for a couple of months, while another keeper decided to leave Toledo, and I was able to apply for a position and was granted the opportunity of being a full-time keeper. 6 months later, I found out they were getting koalas from San Diego Zoo. And from then on, I just took care of koalas at Toledo Zoo. And I was working koalas for 11 years. They had 2 koalas on loan, permanent loan. But it's very expensive to have koalas outside of San Diego area. And so when they decided to end the loan, of course, I was very, very sad. It took me 4 years to get back to working with koalas, and here I am in San Diego. I was lucky enough to be able to move right into the koala position, knowing the koala keepers. So my previous experience really helped me get in the door here, and I've been here for 13 years now and loving every minute of it.
Wow. So you all, so besides koalas, do you have another favorite animal, or is it koalas?
Tree kangaroos.
Tree kangaroos?
I love tree kangaroos.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
I don't know, I always thought, if I had my own zoo, it would have, all the marsupials, and mountain lions, and spotted hyenas, and lemurs, and all kinds of bats.
So you just love everything.
I like a little bit of everything, but not everything, very specific, strange collection that is personally valuable to me. Yeah, for sure.
Well, koalas for sure, but if it wasn't koalas, porcupines.
Oh yeah, porcupines are amazing.
I worked with a few porcupines,
awesome.
And
So,
I grew attached.
One of the things, because I'm sure our listeners, especially our younger listeners, loving animals, loving zoos, want to work at the zoo. So would you say your interest in conservation began when you were really young, or is it just something you stumbled into as you got older?
I think mine, for sure. I mean, growing up, you watch different things on TV, like Animal Planet or Discovery Channel. But for me, the conservation part of it came more from the teaching zoo program. Kind of once I was more in school in animal sciences, and you learn more about the detrimental state that the environment is in, and the animals and everything. So that's kind of when it probably started for me.
Yeah, I would say similar. Not until I was like really learning about it in school did I think, oh my goodness, what have we done? Like,
Right.
how are we possibly going to
Fix this.
fix it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you start young going, oh, I've got this affinity for an animal, but until you get older and you start really looking into it, you don't know what,
True impact.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, with the koalas, it's surprising the plight that they're facing, just like any other animal. And it's hard when people come to the zoo and they're like, but it's like you don't understand. Every animal in this zoo, they're
In the wild.
Yeah.
They're fighting for their lives,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
When so many people talk about how like zoos are so horrible and the animals are in cages, I think people fail to really understand how bad the wild situation is too. Like,
Yeah, and that's what we try to get across. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, when we were doing Why Zoos Matter, I talked about the impact San Diego Zoo had on my experience as a young man or child. And one of the exhibits, I believe it was by the gorillas, that it was the rainforest. And I don't know if it's still there. We kind of laughed that this was so long ago. It's probably long gone. But it was like what we get from the rainforest, the products, and then the signage or the display right next to it was, this is what's happening to the rainforest. And as a young kid, I didn't realize that. So as keepers, do you realize the impact you have on thousands of people that come to the zoo each day with your conservation message? I mean, sometimes you don't appreciate it from your view.
I mean, we hope we have an impact.
Yeah.
That's
we don't
what
always
we
know.
hope that we're doing. But yeah, you never know.
I mean, yeah, a huge part of our job is taking care of the animals, but it's also making sure that people have that takeaway. Yes, you got to come see some cute, cuddly animals, but now what? Like, did you learn something cool about an animal you didn't know, or did you learn what's happening to their habitat, and like what can you do about it? So that's something that we try to get across, but
You don't always know.
yeah.
No,
People don't always tell us.
Well, I'll tell you. Yes, you do. You absolutely do, and it does make an impact. And from a young kid walking up and down those hills,
You'll never forget that.
no. But and seeing the keepers out there cleaning, and I always thought, oh man, that would be the coolest job. And I know young people feel that way. So, thank you. You do have an impact. You just don't realize it. You do. It may not be it's obviously not every single person that comes by there because they don't appreciate what you do, but you are making an impact on, especially our youth, because they're important.
I will say that, like, since I've been a zookeeper, I've seen so many kids who are like little spitfires. They know so much about animals that sometimes I feel like I got to go back to school. And like in that regard, like we have these zoo camps come through, and these kids are so passionate about animals, and it makes me feel inspired because we know that there's someone coming behind us that wants to do the same thing that we're doing. So we're hopefully leaving it in good hands as well.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear that little kid say, I want your job.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you really?
Yeah. I hope so.
I've tried to groom my nieces and nephews that I have from a very young age, and it's so cool. My sister will call and say that, my 5-year-old nephew corrected somebody because someone called a gorilla a monkey, and he says, no, that's an ape, and that's when I know that I've made a difference.
There you go. Yeah. It is. It's critical. It's really important. All right, so let's talk koalas. So I guess, it may be helpful to the listeners if you describe an average day of keeping with the koalas, but with some of the work you do, maybe some of the training. Talk about, because this is the dirty side of the job, because it's not all rainbows and unicorns, right? It's
not all.
a lot of cleaning, a lot of poop.
Great. I mean, I guess we can start with that. We have the largest collection of northern koalas, Queensland koalas, outside of Australia. So we've got, 25, 26 right now, with a couple coming back from loan in a couple weeks here, so full house, lots of mouths to feed. Koalas only eat eucalyptus, so we have a crew that brings in hundreds of pounds of eucalyptus a week. Gosh, I should count it up sometimes, but probably takes us about 2.5 hours to process the food, the eucalyptus, to feed out to the koalas every day. We think maybe like 300 pounds, 300 pounds a day of eucalyptus.
Yeah.
For
they bring us about these huge, about 50-pound bundles, and then we have to bust those open and make individual bundles for all of the individual koalas.
Wow.
So, and we go through probably about 7 or so of those 50-pound bundles.
So 300 pounds plus of eucalyptus for each koala to eat 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of it.
It seems wasteful. But they're picky eaters, and we have to cater to that.
And they only eat the top, foot of the eucalyptus as well.
So we've got one person who focuses on that, and the next person who will go and check out the colony, make sure everyone looks good and is healthy, and then we start the change out of pulling yesterday's eucalyptus, dumping water all over yourself in the process, raking up all the little poop pellets, and making sure health checks are good. We handle our koalas to get weights on them weekly to make sure they're maintaining, or if our moms have joeys, that everyone's growing in good health. What else?
But I have to say,
there's no normal day.
There's no normal day. Yeah. Something
Koalas
always
are
happens.
interesting.
There's always a hiccup, but literally a hiccup. But it keeps us busy and
keeps it interesting, though.
And we're a good team. We work great together.
So what time does your day start at?
6 a.m.
in the morning.
Yes.
To 2:30. So, as much as I'm still not a morning person after doing this for like 15 years, but it sure is nice to be off work at 2:30.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. It's a beautiful day. But holidays, right?
Oh,
what are holidays?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know what
I don't think
holidays
any
are.
keeper knows what a holiday
What
is
are
anymore.
weekends?
Yeah, when's your weekend? Your weekend's like Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday.
It took
a long time. Jenny has Saturday, Sundays off.
Yeah.
But that's very rare.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's great to be off during the week. There's no one else off. You got the world to yourself.
Yes, you do.
I love
In some
having
ways,
weekdays off,
But you wouldn't do it unless you loved it.
Yeah, we have times of the year where we're doing night watches and coming in the middle of the night and taking care of sick animals. Like, yes, we leave our work here because our animals are here, but we take all of the care and concern home.
Right. They take 24/7 care. So that's why holidays, weekends, that you don't know what that is. So do you ever have nightmares about did I lock that service door?
Well, I think you all have to. We're all human.
Everybody is.
It happens,
Not since
Thankfully,
I've really worked
but
koalas.
I would say so. There came a point in my career where I decided that I don't want to work with big cats or bears anymore.
Gosh, yeah. Well, it's just you just have so much to worry about. You have a lot of responsibility, and these animals depend on you. The zoo depends on you, right? Because if one little thing happens, it blows up in the press, and people don't understand.
Yeah, we're very grateful and very lucky. We've got a great team, and so far,
The biggest thing with koalas, right? How do you tell that an animal that sleeps 20 hours a day is lethargic?
Yeah.
that it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's
tough.
real
Yeah.
tough.
It takes a
They're
special
so subtle.
person to be able to identify something that's not right with an animal that sleeps that much. They definitely don't show you unless it's bad.
Yeah.
Right. Does each one of them have individual personalities that you've gotten to know?
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's another thing. Yeah, like an animal that sleeps so much, people just see them sitting up in the tree. It looks like a little gray fuzzball, cute and cuddly. No. They really prefer to cuddle their trees and not us. Like, we handle them, but they're definitely not. Our collection is not those koalas you see people getting photos with in Australia. We handle them knowing that they have very sharp claws and a very powerful bite that most of us have felt. And I lost my train of thought.
But we've learned how to handle those situations. And we train each other, when, especially like when Candis first came on, you know, she had worked with 2 koalas, and now all of a sudden...
2 male koalas, so I had no exposure to females or joeys, so that it was really a whole new world.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden you're taking care of 25, 26, and you got different personalities, different sizes. And
never been chased by a koala before you got here. I know, same. I mean,
Gummy did chase me in
Dallas.
Really?
We've all been chased by koalas.
Yeah.
It happens.
It's the most terrifying and hilarious thing all at the same time to be chased by a koala.
Is it really slow motion, kind of like a sloth?
No, I think that's what people think.
That is such a misconception.
They just move slow because they're up in the tree. They will get at a clip, and they've got a little dash. They just scoot.
They will book it.
Yeah.
And they will, full on charge you. Charge. But
don't get it. It's not like a daily occurrence.
No.
It's like and usually there's a really good reason for it. A lot of times because we have this huge breeding colony, and koalas communicate a lot through smell. And when those girls are in estrus, boy, do they smell so good to those boys, and they just want to climb the walls
rowdy.
to get there. And they will
take it out on us.
They try to go over and through whatever they can, and sometimes the through is us. But I wouldn't trade it because it's such a dynamic job. We get to be a part of not only taking care of the whole collection, but the breeding program and the loan program. I mean, Jenny and Candis may not have fell in love with koalas as much had they not had the opportunity to see them in a zoo outside of Australia. I didn't grow up near a zoo. I don't even know how I ended up here because I didn't go to the zoo like a lot of kids do to find their passion in it. But this program is just really, it's cool, and it's really different than any other keeper job that I've had as well.
Definitely.
Right. So, I mean, people love koalas. I mean, like you said, Jenny had a stuffed koala as a kid. I had a stuffed koala as a kid. So they're incredibly charismatic. People love them. But from your perspective, working with them day in, day out, what makes them special versus some of the other animals you worked with?
Oh God, I don't know what it is.
I know it's hard to put into words.
I think part of it comes from knowing them individually and knowing that they are individuals. It just kind of cracks open a special place in your heart. But I don't know, you guys fell in love with them before you really knew any of them.
I did. I mean, obviously they are marsupials, so I was drawn that way. But I especially, a sentence I said when I was in school was, I want to be a koala keeper at the San Diego Zoo. I said that sentence in my lifetime.
That's awesome.
And so it's crazy that it actually happened, and pretty short in my career, early on, I should say. I lost my train of thought.
I know. What were
We're talking about loving koalas.
Yeah, what makes
what makes them so special?
So, I don't know what I think you fall in love with their cuteness, when you're younger.
That's what initially draws you in, and then
their
when
cuteness,
you either are looking into more information about a species, or when you actually have an opportunity to start working with them. I think personality is the biggest thing. They look different, they sound different, they react different. And then there's just those few that really, I love them all, but there's always those few that really just tug at your heart, and they just capture you, and you just,
Well, and I think, too, it's a little bit of how is it possible that this creature lives in the eucalyptus forest and eats a plant tree that is toxic to, every other animal, and it has survived, it's just, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. And then also to be a part of this breeding program and see these moms with their joeys, and, it's always really neat to see maternal care and stuff, but to see these moms really take care of their little ones and see, we get to a stage where sometimes we're weighing the joeys on their own, and they'll let out this squawk, and the moms come dashing down the tree. It's oh no, they that is their kid, and they know. Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
I think they're just so unique. They are very unique, even within being a marsupial. They're unique, and I love how hardwired they are. You know, I mean, they are just primitive in that way that whether they're in a zoo or in the wild, they are the exact same creature. Like, they're probably one of the very few, if not the only animal in human care that basically lives the exact same that it does in the wild. Yeah. It eats the exact same thing. There are no supplements that we give koalas. Like, eucalyptus,
there's no pellet
that
form.
is what they eat. And you don't see that a lot with other zoo animals. And the fact that, you know, if you pluck leaves off of eucalyptus and put it in a bowl or on a plate, they don't know what to do with it. Yeah. That's not how they are hardwired to eat their food. And so they would basically starve if we tried to feed them like that. So we have to feed them in a very natural way because they're just so, I think it's crazy how just kind of how they're wired. Yeah. And they can't, like, veer off of that. They can't evolve any other way. So that's cool to me, too.
That's interesting. And you know, I was going to ask you other interesting facts. But we know they move fast now. They have to eat the top of the eucalyptus trees. They're very picky eaters, kind of like pandas. This low caloric diet, that's why they sleep 20 hours a day. But any other special things that listeners might not know about koalas?
I feel like if you haven't heard the sound a koala makes, you need to YouTube it.
YouTube koala bellow.
Yeah, koala bellow.
You never would think that sound would come out of that cute, cuddly little animal.
It's like the Tassie devil.
Tassie devil, yeah. It's like, what in the world? Thing. Yeah, those Australian animals, man.
It's awesome.
Yep.
So the San Diego Zoo, obviously the leader in koalas, it's outside of Australia. So what's really the goal of the San Diego Zoo's program with koalas specifically? Jennifer?
You opened your mouth.
Candis?
I know. So I think the main goal, obviously we are part of a breeding program and a loan program. So basically to just sustain a genetically diverse population, kind of, you know, whether it's an insurance population, if something just really goes awry in the wild in Australia, but also ultimately with the loan program to bring koalas to people that typically wouldn't see them. You know, it costs a lot of money to go to Australia, we only have a handful of zoos, even in the U.S., that have koalas that are on loan or have their own separate set. So they're still pretty rare to see. But just being able to kind of expand the reach and to bring koalas to more people and educate them about them.
Right.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
So kind of the ambassador program, and is there an SSP set up for koalas that you guys are involved with?
There is
an SSP, and we hold the stud book, so our management here is responsible for making genetic pairings and sending koalas here or there. You know, we've sent koalas to Europe to help kind of fortify their populations out there to a point where I think they're probably kind of on their own now, and they don't really need a lot more support from us.
Well, yeah, the SSP is the Species Survival Program. So that's a good segue into how do you think koalas are doing in the wild?
Not good.
Yeah, thumbs down, right?
Thumbs down from Jenny.
Yeah. So what's going on out there?
I think it just depends on who you talk to, but right now, you know, they're just listed as either vulnerable or threatened, and it's just trying to get, you know, the government in Australia, because we see it as keepers. The population's declining at a rapid rate, just like other animals. But we see it really significant with the koalas because we work with them day in and day out. And then the research that we take on and participate in, we see it firsthand. But it's just...
I think one of the biggest challenges is that there's not can't really put your finger on a number of how many koalas are there. Like Jenny said, it depends on who you talk to. There could be 80,000. There could be 300,000. because it's hard to find them in some cases. We deal with the same things where people say, there's more polar bears. Well, no, you're just seeing more of them in a concentrated area because they've been driven from where they were. So same thing with koalas. We see a lot of them in certain areas because their habitat's being fragmented. But we're also realizing that there's some out there that we didn't know were there before. So we've been working with some researchers to kind of learn more about those colonies. We are seeing changes in the types of habitat that they're choosing because they have to. So what we do know is that, koalas are protected. Their habitat is not. There's a lot of controversy over that in Australia, as there would be here with development. Like, we want to expand, we want to grow our communities, but at what cost?
Right. Yeah, it's the same story worldwide.
Right.
You look at multiple species. So you're talking about research. I think that's a good thing to talk about. What are we learning about them under human care? So what are some of the things that you're involved with, some of the studies that you've done to not only know how to keep koalas healthy and happy under your care, but things that can be translated into the wild?
I was going to say, you've had some points about stuff at St. Bees.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to work on St. Bees Island, and this is an island that's uninhabited by humans, so they're really learning a lot about what koalas will do when there's no human presence. And but what they were able to use is a lot of the information we were able to gather from captive koalas. We were able to use that in the field. They surprisingly didn't know what size an 8-month-old joey should look like, and then when they came across certain koalas, they would be able to then go, hey, we've got these measurements, and we know what their weight should be at birth and what they should be at 8 months. And they were actually able to use that information to be able to identify particular koalas in the wild, where they are in their
growth process.
Development.
Development, so.
Well, and that's, they're so much more accessible to us. Right. I mean, in the wild, it's hard to see them in the first place a lot of places. But then, actually to get to them, to, get measurements or something on a joey, that's not something that a lot of researchers are able to do. Zoos have really helped with kind of gaining those measurements and weights and developmental stages that they can then utilize when they see one.
No, that's amazing, because that's a new perspective that Jenny was talking about, as far as I didn't even think about that. Like, what's proper growth, growth trajectories of the young, so then you can go translate that into the wild, because they're under perfect condition, almost perfect conditions here.
Perfect body conditions. Right. Compare that to a wild koala. We were finding on the island that these koalas were in great health. They didn't have to worry about food sources. So we were able to use our measurements and body weights and compare those and we found those to be about the same. But then you go into other areas, and now they're able to use that information, and hopefully they can gain some understanding of maybe, there are some stressors that are causing, the decline in weight, or they don't look as fit as they should. So it's nice to be able to use this information and share it with the researchers.
Yeah, and that's going to help their conservation, and out in the field, because it's like you said, it's very difficult to study them in the field. And
I think I was not super scientific, but another thing is the fact that we can see them. I feel like
right.
we granted, we see them at a very close level here at the zoo, but when you're looking up a tree, and you're just looking for a little mottled white bottom amongst the leaves with the clouds as the background, they can be very hard to see. And, Candis and I have both been out to the field in the Blue Mountains, and I don't know if you could say the same for your trip, but there were people in our group that had never been out in the wilderness before and had never seen a koala before. And, they're hiking along, and, as koala keepers, you're like, we're looking for something that's still up in a tree 40, maybe to 100 feet above your head. Like, we need to teach everybody how to slow down and to look. And then, to your surprise, you may have, 3 koalas overhead that you would have walked right past.
Right.
So I feel like that was something kind of that I had to lend to my group that was very into just trudging through the woods. But it was really magical to see like my first wild koala out in Australia.
It was amazing.
And then that immediately made the connection of like, this is why we do what we're doing. Like, to get out here and see that we're helping and seeing that the work we're doing through our loan program, providing funding to these projects in Australia that is allowing the researchers to radio collar and GPS track animals and see where they're going and see that they're moving up hillsides and raising joeys at elevations that they've never seen before and stuff like that. So we're seeing them live in areas that we wouldn't expect they would even try to climb, up these hillsides, rocky cliffs. And, they're doing it because they're finding a nice, quiet solace somewhere outside of development that so basically like a whole new population in the Blue Mountains that wasn't there
nobody
before.
thought existed.
Yeah.
So it's a great discovery, basically, and it does put more koala numbers out there, but that doesn't mean that they still don't need help.
I think it puts a great emphasis on the fact that the land needs to be protected, and maintained because they've chosen this space and they're learning to utilize it.
So this is one of the perks of being a San Diego Zoo koala keeper, is getting to participate with the research projects that the zoo supports. So we're very lucky that's also kind of a special thing about working with koalas. Not every zookeeper working with different animals gets this opportunity. So we're very lucky that we kind of get to see where our money goes and participate in the actual research. This is awesome.
Well, I think it's important too that you publicize that. Tell more people about what you're doing, because I think a lot of people think, zoos make money hand over fist, which we know that's not true. Anybody that's worked in the zoo industry knows that's not true. Zoos operate on extremely tight budgets because it's very expensive to keep these animals. But being that San Diego gives so much back is amazing, and I've known that for a lot of years because I'm a big fan of the San Diego Zoo. But can you talk? And I know it's not specifically dealing with koalas, but some of the other global efforts that San Diego's doing. I've done some rhino research, so I've worked with some of the researchers out at the Wild Animal Park. But do you know of some of the other programs like the koala program that San Diego Zoo is doing right now?
We've always the well-known condors.
Yes.
California condors.
I mean, most recently I'm thinking, our giraffe feeding program at the zoo funds the Northern Rangelands Trust and in Africa, and so we've had keepers go out in the last couple of years and be a part of the Grevy zebra count, so help identifying animals and basically doing a census of how many Grevy zebras are out there, and probably in conjunction with that they've done a number of census opportunities with other animals that they see as well. I'm trying to think of some of the other.
Hey, this is Chris. Welcome back. We had some technical issues. Basically, my card got full, and so I had to switch my card, and it caught a break in the interview with the koala team from the San Diego Zoo. While I was fixing my card, Candis brought up an email that she got from work and was discussing this system called ZIMS, which we were talking about. So I decided to leave it in the interview because it is so important, and it's just another key piece, and I cannot tell you how important this is. Zoos sharing information across the world on the reproduction of these animals, the care of these animals, what they're eating, any science data that they get, that they are starting to share this across agencies, and that not only impacts animals under human care, but most importantly, impacts the animals in the wild. The more information we can get, the better these animals will be, not only under human care as emergency populations, things like that, but also in the wild. So we pick back up where we're talking about the ZIM system. I hope you're enjoying the interview. We're almost there towards the end, so, listen to the koala team from San Diego Zoo.
So it's the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirms that critical information such as fertility and survival rates is missing from global data for more than 98% of known species of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians.
What?
Yeah, so this is where ZIMS, like our information system, comes in because, again, like we were talking about with researchers not really having access to
No, they don't. Yeah.
birth, reproduction age, and that kind of thing that we see all the time.
I'm in shock mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. When I read it, I
yeah.
was like, this is great for this podcast that we're about to do.
Well, we're recording, so let's talk about that. No, that's true, though. I mean,
I think finally, after all this time, we're coming together with ZIM. So, what is it? The Zoological Information
Management System.
yeah, I know John's been talking about that.
We need to share that
And not
information.
not every zoo uses it, so
Right.
that's one.
But even with research, though, I get, they always want to protect their information. But
no, but
to
I think
share that,
it's out there now. I think that certain institutions, sure, but you can reach out now and say, I really need information on X number of things, for Joey information or for, and now we can dip into a pool that's bigger than ours.
Yeah.
Like we can see how things are going in other places.
Yep.
Kind of like when I had someone ask me if it's okay to have an 8-kilogram female koala, and that kind of blew my mind. But you know what? She's big and she's healthy. Keep me posted on Zim.
So welcome back. We had a little technical difficulties. So really quick, Candis pulled up an email that was talking about a recent study talking about how zoos are sharing information critical to research, and it hits home for me because when we did some elephant work because we want to do AI and elephants, something we can't do really well right now, and the researchers I was working with, and it's very tough to get the information out there. So you're saying that zoos are sharing their information across this new system. So you're excited. I just saw the excitement from you all. You're like, this is amazing. And now we can, share info across the world. And I think that's where we're going, especially in conservation.
Well, and just hearing those percentages of missing data that researchers aren't able to collect from wild animals, the fact that zoological facilities are able to get this information and fill those gaps is insane.
It's huge. From a scientist's perspective, it's huge. It's absolutely critical, or we're going to lose a lot of biodiversity, bottom line, period. It's going to be too late before we figure out how to AI elephants, or if this embryo transfer will work in the northern and southern white rhinos, things like that. So, great stuff. So what, you've all been to Australia. What's some of the work that the institutions down there are doing with koalas and their conservation?
That's a great question.
We don't know.
A lot.
we don't have that information.
Some of the team that I was working with, I think with some of the grad students, were looking into tree preference because when we were tracking koalas, we would sometimes find them in trees that weren't eucalyptus, and so then kind of following up more on some research that came out that sometimes koalas will rest in acacia trees because the trunk of the tree runs cooler than the trunk of a eucalyptus tree. So on a warm day, they might seek out a different tree for cooling purposes. So I think they were looking at how much time they're spending in trees other than eucalyptus for feeding versus resting. Trying to think of some of the other...
Yeah, we definitely did that too. We tagged, whenever we found a koala, you tagged the tree, identified the tree, all that kind of stuff. Proximity to the last koala we found, or koalas in the area.
And then some of the other folks that we were working with that were working in the Victorian koala range were doing a lot of translocations. So when they're finding concentrations of koalas on eucalyptus plantations that were going to be used for paper pulp, they would go in and collect all of the animals and find a suitable alternative habitat for them. And also, in those same kind of plantations, trying to encourage the business owner to employ koala spotters before they fell their trees, so that there's someone out there saying, okay, look, there's a koala that's gone up this tree, and so let's not cut the 6 or 10 trees around this area until we can translocate them or until they find another place to go. So that's super cool that the researchers are getting the community more involved, and even, like, it's their business. They make money off those trees, and the fact that people are taking the care and concern to protect those trees for the animal. Right. Because if, koalas are hard up. If there's no trees, there's nowhere for them to live. And a lot of times we see these photos where a plantation has been cut down and there's a koala sitting on the ground, or, even worse, a koala who has died because the tree is cut down with them in it.
Right.
So we need to be able to kind of work together and maintaining the business for the tree farmer, but also help protecting the koalas, because they don't know that tree was not meant for them to live in.
Right. Yeah.
That's all they know.
They go where the food is.
Yeah.
That's they're trying to survive. So switching gears a little bit. So any funny or touching koala stories in your many years? Probably not many.
I think we touched on the chasing story.
Yeah.
Those are always a bit comical.
I mean, I had Wanneroo, I think Colette was her first, right? So first time mom, her Joey was exploring just slightly out of the pouch and lost her grip, and was falling, so dangling, and I had nothing nearby. Well, I just reached my arm up, which of course led to her peeing all over my face. But like, you can't really be
job hazard.
Yeah, like my concern is not the fact that I probably have koala pee in my mouth.
No.
It's that like this little Joey could fall,
right.
And so I had someone run over and get a stump that I could climb onto. And at first it was great because I said before that the moms they really care for their Joeys, but it really took her like a 5 count. When I was like, come get your Joey! But yeah, we'll never forget having a face full of koala. Whoops!
Oh, man.
What else?
Although Wanneroo likes to pawn her Joeys off
yeah.
occasionally for someone to babysit while she goes over to another tree and eats.
I think that
comes back later.
They need their alone time.
That's
they do.
The luxury of our koala female yard setup, is that when females do have Joeys at the same time, they can hitch them with someone else, and they will.
Shop of another mom.
Another mama will feed their baby. Pretty sure that's not a phenomenon that happens in the wild, because mamas just want to protect their one baby, and so our mamas have a little bit of a luxury there. What are some other funny things? We know we have them.
Well, Lindsey had a koala that she really favored. His name was Bradley. And he was so lovable. He was actually one of the 3 Australians that came in 2013.
Yeah, 2013.
And he would just come down onto the ground, and he literally would put his arms up and want you to pick him up. Now, no koala would ever want you to do that. If anything, they go up higher and they want you to stay away. But he was just so personable, and he really liked that human interaction, and he was adorable.
I was like, so which means I used to bring him to meetings, and I would hold him at meetings and just collect his poop in my hand while he pooped during the meeting, so it's all about the poop.
I didn't think we should mention that, but okay.
He was a darling. Yeah, I used to take him everywhere because he wanted to go. He was a blessing.
He was a good ambassador koala.
He was a great ambassador koala.
So
he got to be on TV.
One really cool thing that we do get to do if we have a nice ambassador koala like Bradley is that we're involved with the Make-A-Wish program. So we will get Make-A-Wish families that come and see the koalas, and they actually get the full-on up close. We will bring a koala out for them to see.
That's awesome.
Nobody else gets that experience.
Right.
So those are always real touching kind of stories and moments with the families, for sure.
Yeah, connected with the animals. That's amazing. So, a couple more questions, and I'll let you go because you're probably exhausted. You're like, we've been up since 5 in the morning. Or you wake up at like 5:55 and get to work in 5 minutes.
I wish.
I wish, no.
Not traffic here. So how do we convince others fighting for koalas? Let's just say koalas. How do we have a bunch of listeners in Australia. How do we convince them? I mean, these are animal fanatics, so how do we tell them to convince their friends and their government that saving koalas is worthwhile? It's a big question. It's a big question. Yeah.
I mean, I think it comes down to, like, we're all in it together, and as much as humans we're kind of taking over, so to speak, I feel like we owe it to protect them. And I know that kind of is more of a blanket statement for all animals and not just koalas specifically, but it hurts my heart to think that people don't care about animals and feel that sense of responsibility, the same way that you would feel for your own pet, like that that you are responsible for taking care of their needs. So why should we not have the same responsibility for animals in nature that at this point rely on how we live our lives in order for them to live their lives?
Mm-hmm. And these aren't, they're numbers for all animals. They're not declining naturally. We are the cause for their decline in most cases. So, we are responsible for that. So we need to protect them, and we know, it's just going to cause kind of a cascade effect, You lose an animal, and it triggers something, and something else is lost, and something else is lost, and it just kind of continues on and on and on. I have been asked a lot about what do koalas do? Why are they important? They just sleep for 20 hours a day. And that's how a lot of people view it, is that, like, they're not doing anything for the environment. They're pointless, but that's not true at all. So, yeah.
Anything to add to that one?
It's so big, it's hard to,
it's such a tough question.
Because I can't make anybody do anything that they don't want to do. I feel like, the best we can do is share as much information and knowledge as we have and hope that it triggers somebody to trigger somebody else.
It's just, as a keeper, sometimes just making that one connection and hoping that, they took something away from your interaction, and they'll go back and they'll talk to their friends and family, and the next thing you know, you've got 20 people who start caring about the environment again, and our future generations will have these animals, to take care of. I worry that,
that's the biggest thing, do you want your children and grandchildren to have koalas in the world?
Yeah,
because
to only see something.
If things continue the way they go, it's just.
I see. It's almost 2020, and I see things on the internet. Koalas could be extinct by 2050, and I'm like, that's 30 years. That's
still our lifetime, and you spend so much time thinking, oh, for my grandkids. It's like, no, for me.
right.
Like, at this point, we've gotten to the point where it's no longer for the future. It's for right now.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's and I keep speaking of raising global consciousness of protecting the natural environment. So from your perspective, and I know I kind of, before we started recording, I asked you this, but the moral obligation, do we have that moral obligation to fight for koalas and all those endangered species?
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
It feels daunting, but like little incremental changes, will make a difference. I feel like don't do nothing because it feels too big. Do something because you never know.
That's a good one, Linz.
And on that, we'll end it. So, all right, last question. Before you go, I know you're like, okay, that's good. Yeah, that's a good philosophical. Yeah. So, how do we help you in your efforts? The San Diego Zoo, not just coming to San Diego. Please come to San Diego.
Come
Go to the
San
zoo.
Diego.
This is the
Come
best
see
city
us.
on earth. This is where I grew up. But how do we help koalas, the koala program for the San Diego Zoo, or San Diego Zoo in general, for people that can't come here?
I think definitely just supporting the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Conservancy. which funds a lot of our conservation projects. That's kind of the
follow us.
Umbrella.
Follow the zoo and the safari park on social media. Share your stories. Just speak out for conservation.
Talk to us when you come to the zoo and we're feeding the koalas. You're allowed to talk to us, I promise.
But please don't say, what kind of animal are you? I don't know how many
It's the human
times.
exhibit.
They taught that koala to rake?
If I had a nickel for every time I heard
You'd
something.
be retired.
Yeah.
I'd be living in Australia.
so good.
The keepers don't make that much.
No. It's a labor of love.
It certainly is.
Yeah, it's a labor
you
of
do it
love.
because you love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I know busy day. Thank you, Candis, for setting this up. And San Diego Zoo, please come visit. We will push them all week, forever and ever and ever. That is my zoo. I love it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so
you.
much.